Hi guys, welcome back to Econ Time with SK. So grab your notebooks, your favorite cup of coffee, and let's get started. So this is an important slide, right? Because just like for perfect competition, for Monopoly, I'm just giving you an overview of the quantity produced, the price that is charged, total revenue, average revenue, marginal revenue. You've seen all of these concepts before. Okay, so now let's go back to where we were discussing everything, right? There's just a few interesting things to note. First, see that this is the price. So notice how the price per unit actually falls, right? As quantity is increasing. So what we're saying is that quantity is increasing and price per unit is falling. Does this mean that the firm is charging less for the fourth unit as compared to the third unit? So let me write this down. Does this mean that the firm charges $4 for fourth unit and let's say $4.5 for the third unit? What do you think the answer is? We've never seen that, right? We've never gone to the market and seen that, oh, you know what? If I buy different quantities for each additional unit, I'm going to pay a much lower price, right? So when you're buying a bunch of Oreo cookies, let's say, it's not like for the first package, you pay like $4, and then for the next one, you pay like $3 and so on. So the answer to this is, of course, no. What this actually means is that to sell an additional amount, if the firm wants to sell more and more and more, then it has to charge a lower price for each of the units sold. All right. So that's what I'm saying in this slide here. For a monopoly firm to sell an additional unit, it must lower price for for every unit that it sells. Okay. And that is why, remember, what is the marginal revenue? It is the additional revenue, the revenue that you get from selling an extra unit. Well, that's why the marginal revenue is actually falling. Okay. All right. So what else can we get from this? Okay. Remember that average revenue will always be our demand curve. And so if you now look at the graph, this graph is important, okay? Because for the monopolies, this will always be the revenue curves. Notice that we've got the demand curve here, which is also the average revenue curve. All right, let's just zoom in here. And there's another rule, which for in the interest of saving time, I'm not going to go into much details, but basically the what you need to know is that the marginal revenue always is twice as steep as the average revenue. All right, so it has the same vertical intercept as the demand curve, so same starting point. Okay, and so we see right here they've got that same starting point. So it's got the same starting point, but it's actually the slope here you can see is actually steeper than the average revenue curve. And how much steeper is it? It is twice as steep as the demand curve. Moving on, how does the monopolist choose optimal quantity? Remember, whether it is a monopolist or a perfectly competitive firm or a monopolistically competitive firm, whatever firm you're talking about, their aim is always to maximize profit. So, anytime you start any of this analysis, you're first going to go and look at MC equals to MR. And this will help you determine quantity to produce. All right. So the optimal quantity that the firm's going to produce, that is always going to be where MC equals to MR. So let's look at the diagram we've got here. So all I did was above, I showed you that the demand curve is downward sloping, and this is our marginal revenue curve, and the marginal revenue curve is always going to be twice as steep as the average revenue curve. So that's done. And all we are doing now is introducing the cost curves that we've drawn again and again, right? The cost curves are always the same, no matter what the market structure. Okay. So now that we have the cost curve here, you see, as I said, first, this is the MC curve, this is the MR curve. So this is where MC equals to MR. This, as I said, helps you figure out how much the firm should be producing. So you just trace it down and you are going to be producing Q star. This is how much the monopolist will be producing. But to figure out price depends on, remember I told you how much to charge. This depends on consumer willingness to pay. That is, it depends on the demand curve. Okay, so what I do thus is that I'm going to trace up until I hit the demand curve, and there you're going to draw it to the price axis, and this gives you the price that the monopolist will be charging. So as I said, the monopolist will never be charging a random price. It will always be limited by the demand curve in that particular market. So for the monopolist, what is the key takeaway? To identify what quantity to produce, is going to focus on MC equals to MR. To determine price, it is going to be based on the demand curve. All right, so just remember this. This is basically the key of the monopolist, right? How to determine price, how to determine quantity produced. And if you understand it for the monopolist, you will see that a lot of things become repetitive when we're dealing with monopolistically competitive firms. All right, guys, I shall see you in the next video. Take care. Bye.